Hello everyone, welcome to tutorial 4. We're actually in week 7 and we are going to talk more this week about graphic design with CSS. So in this chapter, we are going to actually learn about the CSS style and how they can be used to add some interesting visual effect to our site. So in order for our site to have more impact and have visual interest, graphic design of the site is very important. So some of the things that we will cover in this week's lecture, we will talk about how to create a figure box. Also, we will focus more on adding a background image and how to add border to the elements as well. We will also be able to create round borders and create a graphic border and also show a text shadow. Also, we will focus on creating a box shadow. We will also talk about linear and radial gradients. Also, we will talk about how to apply 2D and 3D transformation. And we will also apply a CSS filter, and at the end we will be able to create an image map. There are some part of the tutorial 4 that we are not going to cover at the end of this chapter, but if you feel like you want to learn more about it, then you can continue with the tutorial until end of this chapter. But I'm not going to cover that because we need to cover a lot more in this course, so we are not going to go more in details. We already it's already good to learn more about graphic design, but we're not going to focus more on it because there are more important topics, and I want to start also getting into JavaScript, which is going to be the second part of this course. Okay, so let's begin. The first thing that we are going to actually look is how to create figure boxes. For figure and figure caption, they have been used in the main content of the article in HTML5. So basically, the syntax would be figure content, figure caption, and figure to close that in the HTML. So in this place, figure caption element is basically optional, and it can be placed either directly before or after the figure box content. So that's what we have. This is optional, and then we will have the content. Content is those content that is appearing in a figure box, and for caption text is the text that accompanies the figure, but it is optional, so you don't have to have it there. Also, the figure element is used to mark a page content that should be standing apart from the main content. So in here, you can also, as you can see in the HTML structure, you have your image, you have the ALT in the image, the content part, and then you have the caption here. And this caption is optional, but in here we have used these. So what they do, they are basically associated with this image. So there are kind of like keywords that kind of associated with this image that we have in here. Let's look at background style. We already talked about background, but up to now, you have just used the color in RGB or HSL color models. But what the good thing about CSS is that it can also support the use of image for the background. So how do we use it? We are using the background image style. So this is the format, background image column URL that you're going to have. So that URL specifies the name and location of background image. So it's going to, you're going to put where that image is actually located. One thing that's important to mention here, if the image is in the same folder as the style sheet, you can just put the name of the image like 3.png or figure.png or figure.gif or whatever. But if it's not in the same folder, then we have to make sure to include the path that where that image is actually residing. So it's the path of the folder location that you're going to have. Either it's on the server or on your computer, but normally when you publish it's going to be on the server. So you have to put that direct path in there. Other useful things that you need to know about the background image, there's a concept called tiling the background image. Basically, this process is known as tiling because of its similarity to process of filling up a floor or other surface with tile. So basically this process, same as the tile, you are either repeating an image both vertically or horizontally until the background image is filled. Same process as tiling. So basically you can actually put background repeat and you will put the type. So in this case, the repeat is the default because you're going to repeat it in a tiling. But if you don't want to, you have other options other than repeat. You have repeat X, repeat Y, don't repeat, or basically repeat none, or no repeat basically, and round. Or also you can have space. So you can play around with these and you will see how your background image would look like. So I would suggest you to kind of put all of these. So you can just put background repeat repeat. So instead of the type you can put repeat, or background repeat repeat dash X, repeat dash Y, no repeat to see how it will look like, and then repeat round, or you can have background repeat space. So it's very good to practice with these to see how it will show up. So in your book, if you look at this, is basically the example of the tiling background image. So this is the body, which is actually covering this tiling, but basically the repeat is actually continuing. So basically the tiling is actually continues behind this page body as well. So you just have to just practice with this tiling to see how you want your background image to look like. For example, I like sometimes the one that has the space. So you will see like you might have some space here between these tiling pages. And if you have it as no repeat, you are going to have just one of these. It's not going to be repeated. You can also attach the background image. So a background image is attached to its element so that you can scroll through the element content, so the background image scrolls with it. We can also change the property of the background attachment, and it has three different types. So type is basically the default is a scroll, but it can also be fixed or local. So let's look at the difference between a scroll, fixed, and local. A scroll basically sets the background to the scroll with the element content. So this is the default one that you're going to have. Fixed one, create a background that stays in place even as the element content is a scroll. This is a great example to say for the watermarks. Basically, watermarks are translucent graphic displayed behind the content with a message that the content material is basically copyrighted or draft form or some other images that are directed to the reader. So basically those watermark, you can use it as a watermark, so it would not, so that part will not going to scroll. And the local type is basically very similar to the scroll and allow the background, the element background to scroll with the content within the box. So it's the only difference is that it's going to be used with scroll boxes. So it will allow the element background to scroll with the content within that box as well. So we talked about watermarks. So basically they indicate the content material that's copyrighted. Next thing we're going to talk about is setting the background image position. So when you are working with a background image, by default, the browser is actually putting it, the background image by default, you will have it that's going to be on the top left corner. So that's where by default the browser put the background image in there. We can place the background image at different position by basically using this background position horizontal, vertical. So what does the horizontal and vertical mean? Horizontal and vertical, they are basically show us the coordinates of image within the element background. And they are being expressed using the CSS units of measurement. So let's look at the example here. Oh, I forgot to put the image here. So, for instance, it could be like maybe the background position could be in terms of percentage, maybe you can show. So you could have like 20% and 10%, where that 20% is the basically the horizontal part and 10% is the vertical. So that 20% of the width of the element from the left edge of the background, and that 10% of the element is height from the background's top edge. So the background coordinates are basically measured from the top left corner of the background to the top left corner of the image. That's how they're going to be measured. Also, some of the keywords to position a background image could be left, center, right. That you can use it for when you have the background horizontally. For the vertically, you can also use the keywords top, center, and bottom. So these are basically the keywords that you can use for the background position for the vertically and horizontally. You can also, I gave you the measurement in percentage. You can also use another measurement in pixel as well. So basically how you can use this top, center, right, left, you can put the background position and column, and then you can use right, bottom, for example. So just remember that these background position property, they are only useful for non-tile images. If it's the tile image, then it doesn't matter. You cannot use these. Now we are going to talk about defining the extent of the background. Basically, we have talked about in other tutorial, I think it was in tutorial maybe 2, that we talked about the block elements. So we talked about that every block element basically follows a box model. So in which the element content is basically surrounded by padding space. And beyond that, a border space. So the element background by default has basically only the padding space, and it doesn't include the border space. But we can change that by actually using the background clip property. So again, we can put background dash clip column and then the type of that. So the type of that, the type in the background clip could be the content box, it could be padding box, or it could be border box. So the content box means extend the background only through the element content. The padding box extends the element through the padding box, and the border box extends the background through the border space. So you can actually put the type in there by using the background clip property. How about the size of the background image? Basically, by default, the size of the background image is equal to the size stored in the image file. So we can change this file by basically using background dash size, width, and height. So the width and height can be actually used as percentage, or it could be used as pixel. So for example, you can put background size 300px and 200px. So you can put it by pixel, or you can also use the keywords auto, cover, and content. So rather than you put the pixel, because maybe you don't know, you can also use these type of like auto cover or contain. So the cover tells the browser to resize the image to cover all of the element background while still retaining the image proportion. And it depends on the size of the element. So maybe sometimes in this case, your picture could be cropped. The contain keywords scale the image so that it's completely contained within that element. So basically, that means even if not all of the element background is basically covered. So, but again, you have to play with these. So basically, this is what you can see. You can put the pixel, so if you know which size you want. So this one is the background size cover. So you see some things could be actually not shown in here. And this is the contain. So it contains within the element, but part of the background is left uncovered. So in here, you don't have it. So it depends how you want to have this, and it's a great idea if you play around with these basically properties. So we are going to summarize all of these background properties. So basically, different background options can be organized by using these properties. You can put the background, either the color, position, size. Basically, you can have the repeat attachment, original clip, and all that. So basically, you can put all of this in one. So you can put the background column, and then you can put basically the color, which with the path that the position of the image is. You can put the position, maybe center. You can put the size, maybe by percentage, and then you can have, if you want it to be repeat or no repeat, the attachment could be either fix or scroll, and then you can have the content box for original clip. So, well, the color is the background color, URL, as we said, is the location of the image, the position is basically the image position, the size is the size of the image, repeat, basically, if we want to do no repeat, so it means the tiling is not going to be repeat. And then the attachment is specified whether the image scrolls or it's fixed. And the origin defines how position are basically measured on the background. And clip, the last thing that we have discussed, is specify the extent over which the background is basically spread. You can have, for example, you can have it as the clip type could be as box, content box, or border box, or something like that. It depends what you want to put in there for the property. And this concludes the first part of this lecture. So the next part of the lecture, we will start with talking about multiple backgrounds.